So let's take a look at probability. This is the beginning of a new chapter. Some of this will be review, and then on the coming lessons, hopefully we'll get to newer material. So probability, it's just, what are the chances of something happening to you? And we can write it four different ways. We can write it as a fraction, a decimal, and a percent. And the last way would be if it was a just words writing it out. So let's go and take a look at probability and what it looks like as we write it that way. So we have a bag of marbles right here, and basically if you reached into this bag without looking and stirred up all the marbles and you had an even chance of getting any of those marbles, you would say, hey, what's the chance of pulling out a red marble? Well, I've got 4 marbles here that are red. But when I look at the whole thing, there are 10 total marbles sitting in this bag. There's 6 blue and there's 4 red. So for the fraction, the probability of pulling out a red marble would be 4 over 10. Okay? It's the chance of what you're interested in learning about happening goes on top, and the total number goes on the bottom, for how many different outcomes there could be. Now, this is 7th grade, so you always need to simplify your fractions. So this would go down to 2/5. Now we know how to turn a fraction into a percent and a decimal. The top number divided by the bottom number would equal 0.4, and we can slide that decimal over 2 to the right, and that would tell us that it's the same as 40%. Now as far as words, what would that look like? Well, basically you would use the fraction 2 over 5 and say you'd have a 2 out of 5 chance. So that's how you would use the words. Now let's take a look at a few other situations. Let's say that you had a spinner on here, and you had a arrow, and you spun it, and it spun around, and it landed on 7. What's the probability of that happening? Well, you've got 1 equal area out of 8 of it being the 7, so a 1 out of 8 chance. Okay. Now, again, for the spinner, this is not a perfect thing. I actually constructed this myself on here. It's not perfect, but we would have to assume that each number would have the same space as the others. Okay. Probability of the spinner landing on an even number. Well, this is where you count up all of the even numbers. 2, 4, 6, and 8. That would give us 4 areas on that spinner. That would be even, and there's out of a total of 8. So you'd have a 1 out of 2 chance of landing on an even number. Same thing's happening on the odd numbers. They can ask you different questions like this. You just count up the odd numbers. Well, there's 4 spots out of a total of 8. So no problem. And then, of course, we always simplify. So what's the probability of landing on an odd number? 1 out of 2, or 50%. What's the probability of landing on a 1 or a 3? So we don't care if it's a 1 or a 3. So that means that 2 would go on top, and it's out of a total of 8. So, 1/4, 1 out of 4, 25%. That would be the probability. Now, for this one, whoops, didn't mean to have that on there already. For this one, what's the probability of the spinner not landing on a 1 or a 3? So, not the 1 and not the 3. So, let's count up the other ones. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So you'd have a 6 out of 8 chance, or a 3 out of 4 chance of not landing on a 1 or a 3. And then when we take a look at this one down here, what's the probability of not landing on 8? Well, let's just take 8 out of the scenario here, and you'll see that that leaves you 7 spots that you could land on, and it'd be 7/8 for the probability. So that's the basic intro to probability. Next time we'll take a look at independent and dependent events, how you can calculate the odds of, let's say, flipping a quarter 2 times in a row and it landing on tails. So that's where we'll be going next.